Hello everybody, Mike Brailsford of Brailsford Works. Thank you for joining me back on my channel. I appreciate it. If you do any turning and you sell at craft shows, I'm going to help you today figure out how to get the best production out of bowls if that's the mainstay of what you sell. So if you see behind me, there are some rather large logs. That's some sweet gum that I had acquired back in the springtime. So those logs have started to spalt nicely and they'll make some beautiful bowls. So I've sliced them on my sawmill and I had cut those sections in half. And now I am drawing on them the circle, the maximum bowl size that I can get. And all I have is a piece of plywood with a series of holes in it and a screw on one end. And I use a pencil and I just draw out the maximum size bowl that I can get on any particular blank. And I'm going through all four of the blanks that I have cut and drawing those max bowl size that I'm doing right now. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my chainsaw and I'm just going to nibble away at all of the areas that are outside of the circle and cut them down, get them into a rough circle, and that's all I'll need to do before I put them on my lathe. So here I am. I'm just going to cut off those, knock off the corners, and then I'll just whittle away at it a little bit at a time till I get all the way through and have all four of these bowl blanks ready to go. Now, in time, I will do a much bigger batch because I've also got some maple back there. I've got some ash that I acquired from Hurricane Helene that came from Kings Mountain when I went camping there over the fall. And I want to process a lot of this now during the winter and get it where it is drying and get ready for turning in the early spring. So getting these to dry up in my loft over the winter is a far better plan than doing it in the summer, because if they have any moisture in them at all and they get up in my loft, the temperatures up there during the summer are going to be well over 100 degrees. And even after I boiled them with sweet gum before, I had about a 50-50 success rate. I had a lot of them that had cracked, and I think it was due to the excessive heat in my loft. So what I'm going to do now is do this in the winter and do all the processing that I can over the winter so that I don't end up with the same issue. It'll be much more mild up there, and after the full process is done, which you'll see, they should dry much better. Here I'm knocking out the last of my bowl blanks and getting them ready to go, where I'll carry them inside and mount face plates to them and get them stuck on my lathe. Also, processing in the winter is far more agreeable in general because I don't want to be out there wielding a chainsaw in 90-degree temperatures and high humidity. I mean, I just can't take that anymore. So getting everything done in the winter is the way to go. So I've now got them mounted on my lathe, and first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn them into a cylinder. So I'm knocking off all the rough edges and getting them into a cylinder before I start roughing it into my general bowl shape. So I'm flattening out the bottom of the bowl, and I'll also get prepared to cut in a tenon down there so I can turn it around and hold it in the chuck. And then I will again finish shaping the outside of the bowl to the desired shape. So for doing roughing, I like to use my Thompson 3/4 inch bowl gouge. It is a monster in roughing, and I just love using it. So I'm finishing up shaping this first blank into the bowl shape that I desire. And I will do this on all four of the blanks and get them all done at this step before I move on to the next step. In production turning, you want to get each step done with all of your materials. You don't want to have to go back and repeat steps because that just takes extra time, and that has to be factored in when you're pricing your product. So now I'm going to start working on shaping my tenon. Glenn Lucas had taught me that you want to keep your tenon down as small as you can so that the chuck jaws are as much of a complete circle as possible. So what I'm doing on this is I'm actually going to turn it bigger than that on the rough, so that when it comes time to finish the bowl after it's dried, I can get it round again and get it to that really desired shape. I don't think for the rough it's going to be as big a deal to have it a little bit oversized. Here I'm using my skew to get the dovetail shape that I want so it'll hold better in the jaws. So now I'm going to work through the other 3 bowl blanks, getting them all to the same point as the first bowl. So now I'm going to take all of the bowls and I'm going to flatten the tops. I'm going to go through all 4 of them, get the tops flat so it'll make it easier to core. Did the one, now I'm knocking out the next one. And I'll go through all 4 of them. So now I've broken out my one-way easy coring jig, and I'm going to knock out my coring. So on this, I would typically, before, I would have done 2 cores on this and taken a small one out of the center. I have a very large surplus of those small bowls, and they don't sell great, and the amount of time required to get them finished is almost as much as the larger bowls. So the juice really isn't worth the squeeze on the small ones. So what I'm doing here is I'm pouring out a larger bowl, something that'll be more desirable and that will sell much better. So I'm getting it knocked out, and this first one will pop out, and we'll get on to the next bowl. So I'm leaving each of the bowl wall thicknesses between 1.25 inches, 1 3/8. That gives me plenty of meat left on there so that when it dries I can get it to a shape, any kind of shape that I might want. And again, now I'm working through all the rest of the bowl blanks and getting them all to this next step, getting it complete. One of the times I was speaking with Brent English of Robust Tools, I'd asked him if he had ever looked at making a coring jig of his own. And he said that they had tried several different designs, and in the end, they ended up looking a lot like One Way's jig. And he said, you know what, they just did it right, and there's no reason for him to try doing one of his own. So here I'm taking all 4 of the inner cores and I'm adding a tenon to the bottom of them. So I'm going to again make them slightly oversized from what I will want from my finished size tenon, so that after they dry and I round them out again, they'll be the size that I desire to go into my larger chuck. So I did that first inner core, and now it's time to get the other 3 done, so they'll all be done with this step. So as a bowl dries, that tenon will get oblong and will have to be reshaped anyway. So I figured if I add just a little bit more to it, I can get it to that optimal size that I need for my largest chuck jaws. So here comes the last one, and I'll be able to move on to the next step. And this is something else that I'm doing differently this time. So most times I would take that inner core and just leave it and boil it as is. This, because they're a little bit bigger, I've decided I'm going to hollow them out and get them to that same wall thickness that the outer cores are. And so they will all dry at about the same rate. So to hollow this, I'm using my robust Turner's Edge 5/8 bowl gouge, and I'm using their collet handle that I have, and I just love this thing. The handle's nice and long. The gouge itself pops out very fast, makes it way easier to sharpen, and yeah, I just love this tool. The nitriding process they have on their gouges, the edge stays keen for longer than a lot of other gouges I've used. So there I check my thickness. I want to make sure that the bottom doesn't get too thin or stay too fat. I want it to be consistent with the wall size. And again, I'm knocking out the other 3 bowls so that they're all going to be the same thing. Okay, it's time to start boiling them. I use a galvanized garbage can and a turkey cooker. So I've got it set up. I'm now going to finish filling it. I use a brick to hold it in place so they don't float. And that's all there is to it. Now these are going to run for about an hour and a half. Actually, I think it was longer than that. So here I want to just show you that when you do this production work, be prepared for a huge mess. When you're turning like this, especially when it's wet, the chips just love to fly. And I will say that they have covered probably at least a third of my floor space in my shop. They've gone almost the full width of the shop, and they are just everywhere. So just be aware that when you do this, it's messy work. Okay, it's time to retrieve them out of the boil. As you can see by the fact that the sun is now down below the horizon, that it has been a while from when I put them in. And I'm using my grabber tool to kind of fish them out because they are hot, as you can see. And yep, here I am bringing them in, and I will move on to my last step for all 8 of these bowls. So my last step is to use pentacryl on them. I like to do it while they're hot, especially the first coat, because it really just sucks right into the wood. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm getting all 8 of the bowls inside. I've got my pentacryl, what I have left. I've just received another batch, and I'll add another couple coats to all 8 of the bowls before I put it up into my loft to allow it to dry. And that's it for today. If you think you've gotten anything out of this, please click like and subscribe. I'd appreciate that. Also, leave me comments because I answer each and every one. And everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.